who this cycle work in the performing arts. That would be dance, music, theater, including playwriting. It is, again, for Seattle-based artists. That means your address, you do need to reside within the Seattle city limits. And I will talk more about that later, more specifics, and where you can find out, where you can look that up on a map. The program awards $8,000 amount awards to individual artists for a 2-year contract, approximately a 2-year contract. And that is really for the research, development, and presentation of a body of work. That body of work can be in any development stage. It can be really just a seed of an idea in your still not on paper even. It can be maybe halfway through completion, or it can be totally complete, and really the funds are to help you get it out in the public and to give a public presentation. So any and all of the above and anything in between is acceptable. As far as individual artists, it is also open to emerging, mid-career, and established artists. So the only category that is not eligible is if an artist applies and they're enrolled in school. So that makes you ineligible. So just so you know. So those are the key elements of the program. And just one other note that I will be, reiterating throughout this session, and that is that this application is not a project-based application, similar to most grant programs in our office and maybe outside of our office. It is what's called an artist-focused application. And I'll talk again more about this as we're going through the session. But essentially, you're really just talking about in your narrative, in your application, you're really talking about your growth and development and how it has evolved over time. And it's really over time from your last project to your current or next project, and how that looks in terms of how any of your practice and skill set and knowledge have taken a leap or will be taking a leap. So rather than describing in full detail your project or giving a budget, that's not what this application asks for. So I just wanted to also clarify that, but I'll be talking more about that as I go through the session. As Ostrov said, we're recording this session. And it will be posted on the CityArtist website for future reference. We're going to go through maybe the first hour. I'm going to cover a certain amount of information, and then we'll have maybe a short Q&A. I might take 2 or 3 questions at that juncture. If they appear to be more complicated responses, I might ask that we put it on hold and maybe save it for the closing Q&A. But I will, we'll do a short Q&A at the end of the first hour. So just so you know. And yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and start. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by sharing the CityArtist webpage on our website. I've got it right here. So you go to our website, you go to programs. And under programs, you see grants, and all the grant programs are listed under that category of grants. CityArtist is right here, and you can see Ashraf's contact information as well on the right. And I'm going to click on CityArtist. I'm going to show you a couple of things on the website first, though. You can see that each program is listed, and you can click on each program, and all the programs have their own individual guidelines, their own individual criteria for review. And oops, that was a mistake. Oops.
That's okay, Irene. You got this.
Sorry, I've clicked the wrong thing here. So sorry. And now the search is on.
If you just go to the tab to the left of the flux, you should be able to get back to where you were. You can even X out the.
Okay.
There you go.
Sorry, I'm kind of blinded by the sunlight, which I love, so I'm not going to complain about the sunlight. But anyway, sorry everybody. Okay, so for CityArtist 2027 CityArtists, again, it's for individual artists and curators, cultural makers. And again, I just want to stress that this is for the performing arts. The disciplines alternate from year to year, so you do need to be aware of that so that you're applying in the cycle that for the art form that you work in. And again, the odd years, 2027, 2029, are dance, music, theater. The even years, 2028, 2020, 2030 will be literary, media, film, including screenwriting and visual arts. So we alternate the disciplines. Right below this section, you'll see read the full guidelines. So you can click on the full guidelines and they'll pop up. We strongly encourage you to read these guidelines. They contain really majority of the answers to your questions that you might have are in the guidelines. I know it's can be daunting if you've not read the guidelines, but if you go to the section that you are inquiring about, I am certain you will find the answer. But feel free to contact me, and I'm happy to respond to your question as well. Again, eligibility, I mentioned what those key eligibility items were, and I just want to point to a really important detail, and this is a map that you can click on and find out where your residence address lands, whether it's in the city limits or outside the city limits. And I would say that for those of you whose residence is right on the cusp of either North Seattle, South Seattle, you want to check. You want to check that eligibility to save you time in case you're outside the city limits. You can, regroup and see about applying to another grant. Or if you do have permanent workspace, and by permanent, we mean permanent long-term workspace, not workspace that is for 2 months in preparation for this upcoming event. It is more long-term, permanent. It's in your name, and that also, if your residence is outside of Seattle, but your workspace is in Seattle and it's permanent, that also qualifies you for CityArtists. And I'm happy to answer questions about that if you're not certain, but this would be the first step, is to go to the map and enter your full address with a zip code, Seattle, Washington, and it'll give you a visual picture of where your residence lies and whether it's in or out of the Seattle city limits. So that's another important link. And it's, again, this is in the guidelines. not on the website. The guidelines are on the website, the link, and then this map is in there. Again, the funding is $8,000 for all recipients. It's a flat amount for all selected award recipients. And again, I just want to reiterate that the scope of work or the project or the body of work that you will be proposing, this is after you're notified, is when you actually start describing the project and the events and so forth. It is after the awards are made. Then the awarded artists and I discuss this so that a body of work, an event, dates, and so forth are set for the contract. But it is not for the application, because that is not what the reviewers are assessing. They are not assessing your project. They are assessing your growth and development. And I'll talk more about that, but I will reiterate that just for clarity. Again, these funds pay for almost all of your expenses for your body of work, artist fees, and that includes both artistic fees as well as administrative fees. And in this case, because of an individual artist, that really is your fee, your administration, the time that you spent in this information session, the time that you spend coming to a draft review session, or you contact me during phone hours. That's all administration, ordering supplies, securing a venue, securing your collaborators. All of that is administrative time. And then supplies and materials, any kind of modification or update to your online platform. You can rent space and equipment, but you cannot purchase equipment. So if you need to rent equipment for your pre-event or during your event, you can do that. Again, insurance, license, and permits. Any insurance is always a good question to ask your venue about. They may provide some insurance, but not all. And so that's a really important question to ask. If you currently have a business license and it's coming up due during this time, you can include it. These funds will pay for renewing your license or starting a license. Any publicity, graphics, marketing with regard to your public event is also covered. Transportation, mileage, not only for yourself, but your collaborators. Gas is very expensive right now. And if some of your collaborators are out of the city, maybe in outlying areas, or maybe at one of the islands, that is something that can be covered with these funds. And also because CityArtist supports research and development, if for your next body of work requires you to take a workshop, to go to a residency, to go meet with a master artist, you're learning a new technique, then these funds will pay for part of that travel. And then lastly, of course, documentation, which is always very important for a body of work, either to add to your website, to include as samples for your next grant, wherever you're applying. So it's valuable. All of these are really valuable. And even though you are not, for this application, submitting a budget, these are really important details to know. If you get funded, you will need to submit a budget, but not at this juncture. The application side, you do not have to. Again, funding will not cover, it will cover the lead artist of an organization, should you be a lead artist of an organization or collective or group, but it will not pay for the production or the event of the group or the organization. It really is funding you as the individual artist. not your company or your collective or your group or your organization. And no purchase of food, and again, no fundraisers or benefits. And I can answer questions about any of those if you have them. I can answer those later. And again, just reiterating that the budget and the project description all will not be asked until after the awards are final, notification has been sent, and the artists who are awarded will need to submit a project description and a budget, but you do not do that at this juncture, at the application point. And you are now in the second information session. It will be the last one. And again, we'll record it and post it on the webpage. And there are draft review sessions by phone, and these are one-on-one draft review sessions where you can submit a particular question or a particular element of the application that is challenging for you. Then you can let me know. You can send me the narrative. I can review it for one question because they're short appointments. There isn't, unfortunately, time to review the entire application, so you need to be selective about what you need support on. And again, with the draft review, you do send me an email, a standard email, put draft review in the subject line, and I will send you the link where you register for the draft review. It's a sort of complicated, a little bit complicated system, but we're using a new system for the appointments, and felt more secure about going this kind of long-winded route to avoid complications, because it's a new system that we're using. So appreciate your patience on that. And then lastly, I do have open phone hours on Tuesdays, and you don't need an appointment. You just call, and I'm available for an hour. Any questions you might have about the application or eligibility, work sample, any questions you might have. And that's no appointment again. Something you may want to actually go into the guidelines and review are the evaluation criteria, because these are really the elements that the reviewers, your peers, they're all peer artists and curators and cultural makers who will be assessing the narrative questions and the work sample that produce a score and then determine where your application lands. So the stronger your response, the more connected you are to the question that is being asked, the better. It informs the reviewer about, I think the first question is really asking you please describe your last project, your last body of work. And you're really setting that up. The three questions are built on each other, they're connected. And so you're giving a description of your last body of work. What was it? What was it? 10 pieces of sculpture or, excuse me, wrong discipline. Were they two compositions? Was it a full length dance performance? What was the theme? What was the subject matter? How many dancers? Was it a traditional or non-traditional venue? Anything that really sets up that description for the reviewer, so that when you get to question number 1B, the next question, it asks you, how is your current or next body of work? How is it different from your last one? What is different? It's one, instead of two short pieces, you're doing a full length, or vice versa. You worked solo before and you're working collaboratively, or vice versa. new subject, new theme, and new research about, whatever has inspired you. Was it a book? Was it a trip you took? Was it a fellow artist? Whatever inspired this new subject matter, or maybe you're continuing the subject matter, but on a different level. Anything that indicates to the reviewer your growth and development, and how you're challenging not only your practice, but your knowledge and your network. And then finally, the last narrative question, which is really asking you to describe and to tell how you are going to then elevate your game. What steps are you taking to learn these new skill sets? Whatever those might be. Maybe it's more administrative. You're proposing a larger scale project that's really going to use a lot of your administrative time as well. Or you're trying a new technique, you're trying a new approach. So any and all of those can really test the waters for your practice, but that's what you want to talk about. What are you going to do? Going to take a residency, going to take a workshop, going to meet with peers on a regular basis. Whatever it is that you're doing to get you to that next level is what you want to talk about there. That's the plan potential. And the work sample, again, is a pivotal, it's a pretty essential part of your application. I want to stress that the work sample does have requirements and limitations as well. And so you want to pay close attention to that. It's equivalent to 5 minutes, whatever it is, be it video, audio, literary, image, whatever it is, all total, it should be maximum of 5 minutes, and that's it. So I'm gonna go further down because I think that breakdown is further down and it's pretty important. Here it is. So again, this is in the guidelines, and you do want to look at it to just refresh yourself. But if all you're submitting a single format, so if it's just literary, then it's maximum of 10 pages. If it's only media, audio, one piece, then it's 5 minutes. And if it's images by themselves, it would be 8 images, although this is not the visual arts cycle. So I would just give you a heads up that that visual arts is not the primary art form for this cycle, but you can submit images of your performance or a work in progress. And then mixed format work sample is where you're submitting maybe literary and visual. So again, it would be 5 pages of literary, which is half of the full amount, right? And then 4 images, which is half the amount. So you're really cutting everything in half so that it still equals, is still equivalent to 5 minutes. Again, 2.5 minutes for media or audio, and then 5 pages of literary, or 4 images and 2.5 minutes of either media or audio. So again, you do want to pay attention to that when you're putting your work sample together to make sure that those minutes comply within the 5-minute limit, because your work sample is pretty pivotal and you want to select that 5 minutes very carefully. You're telling the reviewers, this is what I consider to be my best work. So take some time and care with that. I also want to emphasize the note at the bottom. If work sample submissions go beyond the limits, panelists will be instructed to only view or listen up to the allowed amount indicated above. And also voiceovers and montage, collage, style work samples are discouraged. We do still get a few of those, and I just want to re-emphasize, it's not about the range of work that you have completed today. It's really about your last work, the current work, and how they compare. What is stretching you from last project to the current project? So it's pretty fine-tuned over time. Over time is fine-tuned.
I mean, we're about 11 minutes or so till midpoint of our session today.
Okay. Well, do you want to spend a little bit of time on registration for Flux?
Yeah, I'd be happy to if that sounds like a good next step.
It's a good point. Yeah.
All right. Well, then I'm going to share my screen here, and we can talk through the Flux element and how you actually apply for these funds. I see some folks are starting to type in the chat, so we'll also keep a lookout in the chat too. All right, I'm going to share my screen now. There it is. So this is what you see when you first log into Flux, our grants portal at the City of Seattle. If you're new to the grants portal, if you have never applied for a grant at the City of Seattle Office of Arts and Culture over the last 5 years, make sure to create a profile. It might also be worth trying to log in and seeing if you have one regardless. So I'm going to log in here with my city email address. And I got to remember what my password is. All right. Hopefully this is it. All right. So most of you may not see this page of what profile would you like to use. But if you do, select grantee. That'll be the best way to get you to where you need to go. I have a few different ones because, of course, I'm internal and I see a couple of different viewpoints. So if you see this page, click grantee. If you don't, you're probably still in the right place. And what you will see is something like this. This here gives you some information about how to use this portal. So worth taking a look at if you haven't spent time in it or if it's been a while. And there's a lot of really good information here that walks you step by step through where you need to go. There are some new or some different steps if you're an organization versus a community group, and some of this information in this front page here sort of talks you through the all the sort of terminology you'll see. What we're going to do to get to the City Artist Grant is go to the Office of Arts and Culture here on the left-hand dashboard. Once you select Office of Arts and Culture, you'll be able to go down, and the first thing you'll see is City Artist, since that is our one grant that's open right now. You'll be able to see mostly and only this if you're on the Office of Arts and Culture part of our dashboard. And so you'll see a lot of the stuff that Irene mentioned here, things that are on their website, and a link to the website as well, including the eligibility criteria and requirements, different parts of the application, some key dates. What you'll really want to do is click this big green button to start that new City Artist funding application. I'm just doing that for us now to show us how that goes. Once we're here, what we're going to do is get through the welcome and the eligibility questions. This may be new to you all. We don't just walk straight into the application. We have some eligibility questions to get through. So first, who is applying? This is a surefire way to check if you have a profile on Flux. So I enter my name. I see that I have a couple of accounts, a test account and a regular account. So I'm going to click my regular account. That's where I'm effectively going to be applying from. And then some eligibility questions. Will your artistic programming practice take place in the City of Seattle? Requirement is yes. That is because public funds from the City of Seattle must go towards public benefit within the City of Seattle. So it's a yes for me. And is your permanent or residence your residence or permanent arts workspace located in Seattle. That is a requirement as well, assuming that you do and that I do. I'm going to click yes here, and then I will click save. Seems to be the next thing. And once I do, I will now start seeing additional questions. See, I go down, and now I see the applications available to me. And it tells me about my applicant or grantee profile. This is what I've set up in the system, and so I see it here reflected because I've applied for grants here before. And then, of course, if I need to update that, I click here and I go to these instructions and I make those step-by-step things happen. Of course, if I have doing business as or an LLC, I can enter that here. Am I the right contact person? Yes. Is there an alternate address I'd like to use in my grantee profile? Maybe I've moved recently. Or maybe I want to put my permanent arts studio space in here instead of my home space, which might not be in the city of Seattle. I sort of use this here to make that happen. And if I say yes, then I will be prompted to make that change. Yes or a no. If I say no, then I will be prompted to make that change. If I say yes, then my address stands. Phone number is important here, or email address, so that we can get in touch with you if we have any questions. We want to know how you heard about this opportunity and did you attend an info session, and you all can say that you did. This is where we start getting into the information in the application. What is the art form that will be used to review your application? And there's a secondary discipline if you have that. It includes much more than just those 3 art forms. And you can select all that apply. This is where we start uploading things. If you have an artist resume, that is part of the application. We can click this plus button and start uploading things. You can drag and drop, or you can just add file. I'll move past that. There's all these bold questions are the ones that are required. So how long have you been creating and presenting artworks? Add that in there. This is where we start talking about what Irene just went over, those information about your first or your last artwork, 1A, 1B, inspiration and challenge of current or next artwork. And then question 2 has its own section here. Work samples, like Irene had mentioned right now, all are here. Those formats and the limits are all here very, very clearly. And of course, you can include information in the description box about that artwork. You can talk about all of these things: year, size, materials, your role, topic, theme, etc. Even just some sentences to describe the artwork. And then, of course, in addition to talking about what they are, you want to just make sure we know what type you're uploading. I'm going to keep moving on to applicants. Oh, yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, can I interject with the work sample, the description? Yeah. And I just want to say with the description, it's really important to know that this is not where you enter more narrative. It's really, you're setting up the reviewer for the 5-minute or equivalent to 5-minute work sample. So this is the beginning of the play. This is the middle of the play. This is the beginning of the composition. This is, you want to set it up so that, and why that particular point of the work, and you want to say why. I feel very strongly about the particular setting of the play, or the drama, or the music, the instrumentation, whatever it is that you feel very strongly about. That's what you want to say briefly in there, but it's important also to include the year the work was done. The reviewers really want to know when this body of work was done that you feel is your best work. Okay.
That's great. Yeah, of course. That makes sense about the year because we're talking about your last artwork and your next and current artwork, and I appreciate that clarity too. All right. So as you can see, as I click each of these work samples, maybe I have a video or audio and an image. Each of these have their own upload areas. and different instructions. So good to pay attention to those. Of course, if you're adding a link to get to your work sample, those links must remain active through November to ensure that panelists can access your materials. And then, of course, friendly reminder to save as you keep going through these sections. And at the very end of the application, we'll receive some applicant demographics questions. These are not going to be used in the selection panels. They're really for us in our internal assessment and evaluation, so that we can share the high-level report of applicant demographic information and look at broad trends in representation and outreach, see if we're doing our jobs and where we can improve. So those questions are here. Again, those are not part of what you will be judged on, simply questions that allow us to see where we're making impact. There's questions about your council district, your neighborhood. There's helpful links to get through those. There's questions about language spoken at home, questions about disabilities, question about age, highest level of education. And at the very, very, very end, you're going to be asked to confirm that you are the authorized person to submit this application. And then you save and you close, and then at some point you submit as well. I'll sort of pause here and see if there's any questions that come up. I do see one in the chat here from Pariza. Should we apply as individuals, but can we collaborate?
You can collaborate, but it cannot be your regular group, collective, or organization that you work with.
I see. Thank you so much. I'm also wondering, can I put their, should I put their name and information as part of the application or not?
No, because you are the person that's being assessed and scored. It is not your collective or your collaborators. It's really your growth and development between your last body of work and the upcoming one.
Thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you for asking. It's a good question.
Another question related to organization versus individual artists is from Sarah Schweid here. Can you please clarify individual artist versus an artist who's part of an organization? Sarah's part of a small theater company and wants to make sure they understand if they're eligible to apply or not.
Yeah, any individual artist is eligible to apply. If you get funded, and at which point you identify a body of work that you're going to propose to research, develop, and present, that cannot be the group that you work with ongoing, the collective, the organization. It has to be a separate group of people that you're working with, because this is really about your stretch. It's about your leap as an individual artist. So
great, thank you. So to clarify, if we had a playwright on our staff and wanted us to produce one of their plays, it could go to funding that playwright's development process, but not us, the company, actually producing the play. Is that correct? Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
In regard to the work samples, is there an emphasis on past work or the current work, or what should the samples actually show? Do you want to see where the new one is going as opposed to the old one, that sort of thing, a comparison, or is that the correct emphasis there?
could be one approach. I think what you are doing with the work sample is you're assuming that the reviewers don't know you or your work. So you're introducing what you consider to be your best work. And if that for you is showing what you did last time compared to where you're going for this next body of work, you have described that in text in your narrative. But if you feel you want to show an example of it, you can choose to do that, or you can choose to make the 5 minutes a piece of work that you feel especially strongly about. That may or may not include the past work.
Okay, thank you.
And one more question in the chat from Cameron, who caught the part about discouraging submission collages. Is that specific to art formats or submission formats? If they're submitting for a project that is relating to the growth of an event, should a sharing a video collage reflecting the growth between years also be discouraged? They're just trying to think about how to best represent that central music festival they're applying for.
What happens with the collages, and thank you for asking that question, is there's such short bites that the reviewer doesn't really get to see any kind of development of a work. So even in 2.5 minutes, they can see something evolving, and developing within a body of work. And I don't mean from last one to current one, but I just mean a dance or a piece of music or, a play, snippet of a play. But if it's 2 seconds, 2 seconds, 2 seconds, that's what it is. They're just getting a quick look. But not really seeing, the work and how it might have just, developed, even in presentation, even in a performance. So that is what is difficult for the reviewers, is that if it's nanoseconds, they really don't get to sink their teeth into it.
Got it. Thank you. That's so helpful. I'll make sure that, especially if I have that 5-minute window within it, to make sure that I properly represent the growth between last year to where we're trying to go to. Cool. Thank you. So I can use a video collage, basically. Just need to make sure it's not like middle seconds into it. You cut out a little bit there. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I think what the guidelines say is not encouraged. Montage and collage, they're not encouraged because it, according to the peer reviewers, it's not enough for them to be able to sink their teeth into it. And they're not really assessing for what is the biggest range that you have of things that you have done. It's not about that. It's about what you consider to be your best work. And that doesn't need to be 5 different things. But I'm happy to answer more specifically if you need. I'm happy to do that.
Thank you.
Sure, you're welcome.
All right, I got a couple messages here from Joan. The sample they want to use is a collaboration of her as a director and want to continue researching. They want to use 2 work samples. Can they look at video 1 for X amount of minutes from start, and second sample, same idea? Joan, feel free to jump in here.
Oh, you mean me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh,
and if you want to clarify your question.
Well, the first one is that what I want to submit is actually it's kind of an ongoing collaboration that I'm actually the main director of, and so I feel like my growth as an artist fits in here. So but it is a collaboration that I am part of, even though, like I say, I'm the main director. The second one, I was thinking of using 2 video samples of the same piece, but having it, to say, okay, start at the beginning of this one and go for 3 minutes, and then the second one start at the beginning. I mean, is that too complicated, or?
I think you can probably describe that in that box. You can say,
okay.
This is,
okay.
Because you're going to give the title. Title's going to be the same, but you're saying from middle to end or from start to middle or something, so it's distinguishable. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, easy. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
That's it for now. Mo is typing in the chat, but otherwise, we're clear.
Okay.
Oh, wait.
Maybe we can.
Here we go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Mo's got it in. All right. One of the projects they have involves collaborating with an artist who's no longer in Seattle. We each have separate and clear sets of duties we are doing on the project. Would my portion of the project fit into these guidelines if they were to apply for their portion of the project?
Oh, sure. Yes. And you can invite.
Great. Thank you.
a collaborator from outside of Seattle, you just want to make sure these funds are tax-based in Seattle. So we definitely want to see the support and sustainability of our local individual artists.
Awesome. All right, I think we can proceed with the rest of our presentation today.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to go to share. Okay, so this may seem repetitive, but based on past cycles and reviewers' assessments, I've chosen to talk a little bit more about the narrative questions. And as I mentioned earlier, the three narrative questions are definitely related and they're connected. And you want to, number one, make sure that you're not revisiting your resume, because the resume is a separate document. It's a history of the work that you have done in the past, and the reviewers have that to look at. So in these narrative questions, you want to not repeat what's in your resume. You want to talk about like I said, the brief description of your last body of work, so that when you respond to, or when it's being read by the reviewer, question 1B or the second question directly relates, because then you're saying, based on my last work, and you've just described it, I am now leaping into this. I'm heading in that direction. I'm either gonna extend this to a full evening, or I'm going to actually work with new instrumentation. I'm working with a whole new set of collaborators. Whatever it is that is different with this next body of work is what you want to talk about. And it can be any of the items that are showing here. It could be a new and different theme. It could be a technique. It could be the scale of the work. It could even be, you know, a new partner that you're collaborating with. But even one of those can translate into a lot of work. So you do not have to have everything different and new. You can just have one thing, because sometimes that alone takes an enormous amount of time to research, to explore, to experiment. So the idea here is not that it's everything, but whatever it is that's different, that's what you're discussing in here, so that the reviewers can say, oh, I see where this artist was, you know, 2 years ago, or, you know, whenever your body of work was completed, and where they're headed with this new body of work. And again, I did mention that if funded, the projects are in every level of development, and all of them are acceptable. So so that's what you're talking about in that 1B question, or the second question, so that you're really sharing with the reviewer the, you know, the explorations, the new explorations, the new challenges that you're setting in front of yourself, and they can see the you know, the overall sort of arc of where you've been, where you're going. And then question number 2, and just FYI, question 1A and 1B are scored as a combo. So just so you know, because they are so closely related. And then question number 2 is where you are then telling the reviewers, or describing what steps you're going to take to elevate your capacities, your networks, might even be administrative, right? It might be administrative because you're overseeing more people. You've got a larger scale body of work. So you're really broadening that aspect of your being an artist, your administrative management side, and how you're going to learn those new skills. And that's where you talk about any, as I mentioned, any workshops or peer sessions with feedback, whatever that might look like. Could be a residency, could be any number of things. But that is what you are charging yourself with in order to meet this new aspect of your work. And like I said, it doesn't have to be every single aspect. It can be one thing that's different, even if it's subject matter. That right there can translate into a lot of research, interviews, whatever. And so you want to describe that in that question. Are there any questions about this part of the application? It is very different from describing a project, giving a budget, and doing an outreach or a promotional plan. It's very different, but we do get those responses in these questions. And so what happens is the reviewers end up learning a lot about your project, but they don't learn a lot about your growth and development and how that is transforming. How is that taking place? How is that taking shape? Okay. But the three questions are definitely built on each other. Okay. And again, I'm going to have these draft reviews sessions where if any of these questions are particularly challenging, then, let me know that you want a draft review appointment. As I mentioned, we're using this new system, so it's a little convoluted. You contact me, put draft review in the subject line, and I'll know that I need to contact you and give you the link so that you can then make an appointment. It's convoluted, but it's a new system. So, and then you can send me the narrative that you have so far, or what you have in narrative, and then we can talk about it. And if you send it to me in advance, I can have a chance to read it before, because trying to read it 15 minutes before is not ample time. But if you could send it to me in advance, that would be great. Okay. Any questions about that, about the draft reviews?
Yes.
Okay.
Are the draft reviews one-on-one, or are they also group sessions?
No, the draft reviews are one-on-one.
Cool.
Yeah, those are one-on-one because it's whatever is challenging you at that time. It may be totally different for you than for someone else, but it's one-on-one. Mm-hmm.
Looking forward to it.
I mean, I really appreciate you going over this. I read it, but it's a different kind of thing to think about, really. So I really appreciate you going over it in detail again.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's a different application. It is a very different application, but we did get feedback from artists who felt it would be great to not have the project budget and promotional plan. So this is different because it's really, you're talking about your practice and your evolution over time. And it's not over a long period of time. It's just your last project and your next one. So it's really honed in to that so that it doesn't feel so monumental. It's not everything. It's just last project, current, next project. So it's a little more fine-tuned. Any other questions?
None here in the chat.
Okay, sounds great. Okay, and I'm going to revisit the work sample again, only because we just feel that the work sample guidelines themselves, and they're in writing, sometimes they're overlooked, and so it does translate into just making administrative calls about, it's only 5 minutes, so we're going to take 2.5 here and 2.5 there, and we'd love to have you as the artist applicant determine that 2.5 minutes to yourself. So, so you want to consider your best work. What is your best work? And that is what you're submitting, because you want to assume that the reviewers don't know you or your work. To take time to prepare it and upload the samples early. But even doing that, you want to make sure that before you submit the application, that you're triple checking everything, especially if there's a link that goes to your work sample. If there's a link and there's a password, test it, check it throughout the process, check it and make sure it's active, make sure it's accessible. The work sample is accessible and it's the one you intended, and it's not static, and it's not, we can't see it, we can't hear it. You want to just triple check it, because it's a important part of your application. So again, the timeframes that are in the guidelines, really important to look at. Just take a look at it before you submit it and make sure, okay, I have literary and I have, a script, but I also have image or something. So I want to make sure I have the right amount that equals 5 minutes. And then again, introducing the work sample. It's sometimes that little box is used as a box to give more narrative about your project. And so you want to stay away from that, because this is really asking you to describe that and set up that work sample, that equivalent to 5-minute work sample. So it might be 2.5 minutes of this and 5 pages of that, or 4 images of that. And you want to say, this is the middle part, this is the end, this is from, my work from 2020, and this is why it stands out for me. It was a unique approach or a unique technique, whatever. And your role in it. Yeah, so essentially you just want to make sure that that you're setting for the reviewer to know what it is they're going to be looking at or hearing or viewing. And just double checking everything, even the resume. You want to, anything you upload before you submit it, check it one more time before you submit. Check it and make sure it's visible, it's accessible, it's what you intended, it doesn't have the wrong year or something. You want to just double check all of that. And then these are really generic tips, not necessarily about any particular thing, but they're general tips. These more explicitly, there's a longer list of tips in the guidelines. If you scroll down, you'll see the tips. I've kind of shortened this, but again, it's really important to read the guidelines, work sample information. What is the criteria? Is my narrative responding to that criteria, or do I need to switch my narrative to include this? Or I'm missing that in the, what it states in the criteria. And again, the limitation on the work sample. And you're at an information session, so you've gotten all this information, all these tips, all this guidance, so that's great. You can get more through the draft review. You can contact me via email. You can contact me via phone on those phone hours that no appointment needed. So that's what we are here for. We're here to we want you to have a successful submit a successful application. And so whatever questions I can answer before the deadline, the better. I think I've repeated myself quite a bit on these, but they're just really important tips that we have found. Applications are submitted and the work sample isn't clear, it's not accessible, the password's not active. The questions are really not directly responding to the question. And maybe even have someone review your narrative. Look at the question, share the question, share the narrative. Sometimes just someone else taking a different look at it might be helpful. And then lastly, just encouraging you to submit your application. Allow anywhere between 30 and 40 minutes before 5 o'clock to submit, because you might have forgotten something. There might be a box that was left blank. Any number of things, technical things can happen. And so you have to go back and correct it, even with, might be your work sample, it might be the resume, but then you have time and you're not looking at 5 minutes before the deadline. You've got a little bit of time and you can correct whatever needs correcting and before you submit. So that's also really important to know, is just to allow time for that. And I think that is my last pointer for applicants. And I'm not sure if I should leave this up a little bit longer, just so you can take a look at it.
Question here in the chat. Is there a possibility of receiving the PowerPoint after the meeting as shared out with this group?
Well, I think what I may actually inquire in-house is if that can be posted on the website. And Ashraf, you may know, you might even know if that's possible or not. Just,
I'm not sure if it's possible, but I think one way or the other, whether we can send it out in an email blast like we did with the link to this meeting, or I like the idea of posting it on the webpage too. We'll see what's possible.
okay. Well, whichever is possible, we'll get the PowerPoint to you. Okay. And I am getting a few examples of responses from for these questions that, again, I'm also hoping I can post on the webpage. But if not, again, I've got everybody's email address from this registration and can circulate that in addition to just any of the artists who are emailing me or calling me about questions about the application. And again, I just want to reiterate that at this juncture, you're not being assessed on the project and budget. You're being assessed on the arc of your practice and your work. And then once the panel, the reviewers complete their work and the notification is sent out, and the awardees are really going to be on task to then identify a project, a body of work, and submit a budget at that juncture. So not at this one, but later. And I think Ashraf mentioned when it was going through the Flux application that there are questions, and any feedback that you can give us on the application, on the information sessions, is always really great for us to hear what's working and what's not working. What can we adjust? What can we revise to make it better, more helpful for you as an applicant?
That's great. Joan has other questions they want to ask.
Okay.
Is that is okay? Bye. Go ahead.
Yes.
Um, Well, okay, one is it says, it says something like a 2-year contract. So can you explain that? What we mean by that?
Sure. The city artist makes awards, and then the artist, really, these are 2-year contracts. So you have up to 2 years to research, develop, and present. And the
Okay.
reason for that is for individual artists, you wear every hat, you do every task, you take on every role. So 2 years, you have up to 2 years, but like I said, for those who submit a project that really the body of work is finished, they need the money to put it out there and get the presentation. Might be less than a year, right? But for those who are really just in the conceptual stage, they're needing a lot more work, a lot more time to kind of hone in on what it is that the new body of work is going to be. So that's why the 2 years is because we want to, and sometimes even your best laid plans in terms of I'm going to present next spring, 2027, and something happens, something comes up unexpectedly, and you've got to extend it out. So that, again, you've got 2 years, so that's still covered. So if you have to bump it out, the contract is 2 years. So again, it's the dynamic of the individual artist, the work dynamic of the individual artist, and all the demands and multiple jobs, and it's really responding to that.
Okay. The question 2 is, I actually had applied for another grant for something else to the city. So what happens if I get that grant in the meantime before I've heard about this? I mean, how does that happen?
Okay,
I
is
mean,
it another city department?
Yeah.
Oh,
think it
okay, they're not in sync. If it were another program in our office, we definitely want to have a conversation, and mostly
Okay.
because we want to make sure that we're not funding the same project twice.
Oh, no,
And-
yeah, it's
and-
completely different. Yeah, but yeah,
Yeah.
we just have to see what happens at the time. Okay. All right, thank you.
Yes. Yeah, but good question. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, so you can apply to other sources of funding with the city, Department of Neighborhoods, Office of Economic Development. There are just other departments that give funds for a lot of different purposes, but they do include art and culture. And so those don't, or if you get funding from For Culture or Artist Trust, those are separate separate agencies. And so that doesn't, there's no issue with that. If you get funding from For Culture and from our office for the same project, that's
Oh,
matter.
yeah, this,
Yeah,
okay,
that-
cool. Thanks.
Yeah.
I've got a couple questions in the chat here. One is
Okay.
that regarding work samples, is there an audio format that's preferred?
I don't think there is a format that's preferred. I think we have accepted most. What I actually don't know is what is not workable in our Flux system. So I can find out what is not acceptable in Flux.
But assuming an MP3 format would be okay for audio.
I have seen that one. Yes, that
Okay.
is acceptable.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
Thank you
another
for asking.
question here.
Mhm.
Another question here. Is it required to have the performance within 2 years to be in compliance with the grant? Or as long as the 8K is used for development over the 2 years, is that okay?
Yeah, the event is really the closing of your work that you have been researching and developing. So the event is the closing, and it does have to happen before the contract expires in 2 years. So let's say you got funded, you'd have 2 years, so that would be 2028. So that would be November or October actually preferably October would be the date of your event, so that you would allow yourself time to do all the final report, get all the paperwork in, what you need to submit in November. So ideally, that is what we're aiming for. Does that answer your question?
We got a thank you in the chat.
Okay, great.
One thing I'll add to the mix is that your contracts will begin in 2027. So as early as Q1 2027 is when the work that's funded by this grant would begin, so that 2 years, like you said, Irene, is January 2027 to December 2028 technically, but everybody's contract starts at a different date, just because there is some pre-contract work to be had, and all of that will be discussed after the grant has been adjudicated and we have have the ranks awardees in tow.
Right. Thank you, Ashraf. And yes, there's a whole pre-contract process, and it's really just to shape that body of work, that project, and get the dates lined up. And I will tell you that there are elements in the contract that just because things happen, and we know things happen, that the date, the venue can change, only because sometimes that happens. You're bumped, or you relocate, or you get another big award and you've got to relocate, so you have to extend. All kinds of things happen. So the idea is flexibility for individual artists and for all of our contractors.
Can I ask a clarification again? Sorry, about the performance requirement then?
Mm-hmm.
So
Sure.
say a playwright applies to develop a play. The performance has to happen within the grant cycle, but if the performance is being produced by a theater company, I think I'm getting confused about like what the funding can be used for the performance. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. There are a couple of workarounds with that. With your specific example, the playwright is obviously the applicant, perhaps, and developing this play for performance by a company. Right, an organization, let's say a theater organization, then perhaps number one, that needs to be very clearly defined in the promotional plan, in the promotions that are sent around. That this was an individual artist, CityArtist grant that was funded to the playwright,
I see. Yep.
and then there could be. Also there just are definite workarounds that can happen, and so it's a kind of individual by individual, but the most important thing is that the awardee is an individual artist, and that the body of work is really supporting that artist's capacities to get to the next level, whatever that might be.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That is an interesting question, because I'm not a playwright, but if I apply for this because I'm writing a play and I want support for that. I have finished the play, but is it enough to finish the play, or does that play need to be performed? Maybe that's the question here.
Okay, so with CityArtist,
there has to be some community engagement, right?
Event, some kind of public event, and it can be maybe vignettes, from the play. It doesn't have to be the full play, but they are vignettes with maybe Q&A. But it does have to be public. It has to be a public event. And then if it is produced by a local theater, then again, making sure that the promotional pieces say that the playwright and the writing of the play, the production or generative script was funded by the Office of Arts and Culture's CityArtist program. Something of that nature. Is kind of mouthful title and all, but yeah, thank you for that question.
Another great question here in the chat. There is a UBI number that's required to accept funds as listed in the guidelines. In the theater company example, could the collaborating theater or production company's UBI be used, or does individual artists need to set up a single member LLC and apply for a UBI?
Yeah, the latter. The individual artist is the contract is made out to the individual artist, and whether that individual artist has an LLC or a DBA or an entity, a business entity, but it definitely is the individual artist and not. It can't be a nonprofit. It can't be a fiscal sponsor. It's the individual artist. And yeah, and that has come up in the past. So appreciate you asking.
That's great. Thank you. No other questions in the chat so far.
Okay. Well, I hope that some of you will take advantage of the draft review appointment, one-on-one appointments, and or the phone. No appointment needed. Phone hours on weekly before the deadline. And again, just remembering the connection of the 3 questions. Reading that criteria that's in the guidelines, so that are you speaking to that criteria, and then the work sample, making sure it's within the limits, and I'm just trying to think if there's anything else. I think I've repeated the areas that seem to be areas that sometimes artists take a misstep on, and want to make sure that that you go back and recheck and respond to the questions, and not try to revisit your resume in these questions. That happens quite a bit, where a reviewer is really just reading what's already in your resume. Anyway, but I'm like I said, I'm available via email, text, phone, and I will have those draft review appointments, and hope that I can help you further as you complete your application. Anything else to add, Ashraf?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for coming. I think I might just look at the time, have about 15 minutes, and I'm happy to be available if anybody thinks of a last minute question. Want to make sure I'm here for the full time and can assist with any questions that you have.
I'm good. Thank you for your time. I'm going to leave the meeting. I really appreciate it.
Sure, no problem. Thank you for joining us.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you so much.
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you for coming. Nice to see you, Joan.
Long time. Yeah. Yeah, thanks a lot.
You're welcome.